We go. Okay, guys. So this presentation we're doing on True Techniques prehab method. Right? It's it's a relatively old method of fitness, but new method of fitness to, I guess, the general population. Because for so many years, the focus for fitness and gyms and the reason people attend the gym has been based around aesthetics. All right, it's losing weight and gaining lean muscle mass has been a sole focus. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to shift that, okay? Because it's a good focus to have. It's not always beneficial long term, and not everyone is obsessed with going to the gym to lose weight or drastically lose weight or improve the way they look. A lot of people just want to do it because it's healthy. It's the same way we clean our teeth. I mean, I can't leave the house in the morning without my teeth being brushed because then I feel dirty and rotten. It's not good. It's the same with a workout. I can't go more than 3 days without working out unless my body doesn't feel good. All right. So I'm going to just go in depth a little bit about sort of what I'm seeing and viewing behind the scenes of the programs, and then how those programs come to light. So what you guys see. Okay. So first off, what I'll say, a little line I've picked up over the years that I love, is the reason people exercise is because we no longer live the way our bodies are designed to live. Okay, so people started designing machines and exercise routines to restore activity levels or movements that we no longer do due to our sedentary lifestyle. Now, when that shifted to training for fitness and aesthetics and looking good and performing as best we can, a lot of those foundational reasons for taking care of the body and looking after it sort of get lost. Okay, so moving and exercising for the sake of moving and exercising are always going to improve the way you move and exercise. A lot of the time it can have diminishing opposite effects. Okay. Let me actually, why don't I have this up? Okay, so the insights we're going to get from this presentation is we're going to have a deep understanding of what prehab means in terms of the word and how we use it. We're going to go into how injury and dysfunction occurs, what we look at when we're assessing and correcting dysfunctional movement, and what our prehab system that we've put together looks like. Okay. For those that haven't met me, my name's Tim Sunderland. Okay, I've been in the fitness industry for 8 years in 2020. I went into the industry because I was getting serious with my bodybuilding style training. So that got me into the industry, but due to seeing massive gaps within the fitness industry, 3 years into my competitive bodybuilding, I shifted my attention away from aesthetics only training to more of a corrective or injury prevention style training, trying to get people in the gym for as long as possible. Okay. So within my 8 years, for the last 4 years, I've also been a fitness educator. Okay, so when I first started out, I started at places like the Australian Institute of Applied Sciences. I was there for about a year, teaching a part of a remedial massage diploma. And then sort of at the same time I was finishing that up, I was a former lecturer of the Australian Institute of Personal Trainers. That's where I did your certificate 3 and 4, your base qualifications to be a personal trainer. I didn't agree with a lot of the practices or the certification in itself there, so I left for that reason. But currently I'm working for 2 other organizations for the last 3 and 4 years. I'm called Rehab Trainer. Our Rehab Trainer is designed by a sports physio, Ulrich Larson, fantastic guy. He teaches his series of courses all across the world and all across the country. And he's a physio that saw the same gap in the fitness and sports world as I did. There's too many people having to go to a physio or having to go to a surgery with a condition that could have been very, very easily prevented if they just worked out properly. So I present his courses. He's trying to educate the personal trainers and fitness coaches of the industry, sort of how we can deal with, assess, and help correct some of these common issues before they get to a physio's level. And a similar path, I also present courses for the Functional Training Institute. Functional Training Institute teaches a lot of different modalities around kettlebells, suspension trainer, battle ropes, barbells, all these different tools, but we've created a similar system in the fact that we go through assessment, restorative movement, and progressive strength and fitness. So we're getting someone from a sedentary-based lifestyle right through to an advanced athleticism without a huge risk of injury. Okay, so they take me all around the country. They take me all around Asia teaching these courses. So great insights into industry as a whole. So what I've done is I've taken the best of what I've interested myself, and I've put them down into True Technique Fitness, a gym that I'm the owner and founder of, where we specialize in strength and fitness for the general population. Okay, so that's a little bit about me. So then we'll go straight into the system we've created around that. So what is prehab? Okay, and why do we use this method to excel in strength and fitness? Okay, so that by definition, prehab is a proactive approach to avoiding pain and injury, build strength and stability around your most vulnerable areas while improving mobility, balance, and joint function, decrease the potential for injuries. Okay, all sounds really good. The whole idea of prehab is where we're really actively looking at where your weakest points, your weakest movements are, and building strength and control through that. That way you can stay in the gym for as long as you can, because the guys like us that have been in the industry for years and years and years, the common pattern we see that goes from health and fitness being a grind and struggle, health and fitness being it's easy, anyone can do it sort of attitude, is a good 3 years of creating habits and processes. And you can't be consistently in the gym for 3 years if you're constantly stepping in and out with injury, which is what I most commonly see. So when I'm working within, whether it be other fitness coaches or very high, or I guess sort of people that take their own training very seriously, is that's the glass ceiling that they're putting on themselves. Is if you train for fitness and you're fitter and stronger, without taking care of your weakest areas, your most vulnerable points, any dysfunctional movement, if you don't take care of any of that, those dysfunctions become your fitness ceiling, right? So it's not your mentality, it won't be your lifestyle, it won't be the habits you've created around the gym. It will be this ongoing back and forth niggling pain and injury that you're constantly dealing with. The storyline I commonly see is people come into the gym, they come into fitness, they go into running or whatever, go 6, 8, 10 months, boom, they get an injury, they rest it, spend a few $100 on rehab here and there, but don't take it too seriously. Once they've rested and the inflammation and the pain's gone away, they jump back into where the pain come from, which is they're going back to the gym, they're going back to running, they're going back to whatever it was, without changing how that exercise or movement was performed. All they're doing is resting and repeating. That doesn't last long, and that turns you to, yes, you might be fit, athletic, and looking good now. By the time you creep into those later stages in life, that will quickly catch up to you. Okay, so when I say things like exercise for the sake of exercise, or if I just exercise I'll get better, is a big myth, because if you have any sort of dysfunctional movement, right, speed, exercise, and weight will only accelerate the time it takes from it being a dysfunction to a pain to an injury. Okay, exercising without taking care of any dysfunction will only accelerate the time that it knocks you out with injury. So the idea of prehab is to look at those little markers, your weak, vulnerable areas, your dysfunctional movements. We look at those as early as possible, and then adapt your training system or your training program for working on those areas where you're most likely to be injured as you're progressing in strength and fitness. All right. Okay. I hope that makes sense. That's the definition of prehab. So we're trying to prevent you from going to rehab. All right. If we're all caught up, the three main causes of an injury always come into one of these three categories. Okay. First and foremost, the one I mainly deal with hands-on is muscle imbalances. When I'm talking rehab, or even when I'm talking about rehab trainer, the course provider I present the certifications for, is we mainly work in imbalances. Now, a muscular imbalance is the muscles in and around a singular joint. I want you to think of it like a seesaw. Okay. If a muscle or a joint is imbalanced, one side of the joint is very heavy, so it's very tight, it's very short, and it's what we call overactive. Other side of the joint is the opposite. Right? It's been pulled long, it's weak, and it's often what we call inhibited. It can't really contract. Okay, so when that muscle is imbalanced, the joint is pulled out of center, and therefore you're now unevenly loading certain joints throughout the body. It's not evenly distributed. Second is training error. It's what I mostly see in and out when I'm observing the fitness industry. Training error is what I most commonly see go wrong. The training error, in my mind, comes down to ineffective warm-up. Right? So warm-up is not proactively looking at any way to change the way your body moves or perceives its relative tension or flexibility. All right. A lot of warm-up modalities is just, we've got 5 minutes, wave your arms and legs around. All right, heart rate's up, stretched something, one or two things. Now let's go into it. That doesn't work because you're not training, or you're not trying to get out of any poor movement. You're not trying to improve your movement quality, then expand on that improved quality in the workout. Okay. So if you don't expand what you've tried and improved on, after you've waved your arms and legs around, the only thing that's going to happen is, yeah, the workout might create some stimulus to, burn some fat or do whatever. It's going to accelerate you quicker to a pain and injury. Training error can also come down to the program itself. So a lot of things I see within the industry is training error is not looking at how even exercises are ordered. So to put it real basic, maybe a lot of the time you have more exercises that work the front of your body, you do the back of your body. The recovery from that stimulus post-workout will be all these muscles tightening up and weakening the back. It's not what we want, because obviously that's where most of us sit all day. Like, I'm sitting on the floor, I'm slouched over this computer right now. I'm in a terrible posture. Now, I'm not going to try and repeat that posture in the gym by doing crunches, lots of push-ups, sort of like mountain climber stuff, because that's all working this front chain that I'm punched over anyway. What I'm going to do is, if you want a good program, hopefully the coach that you're working with looks at how you live your life outside of the gym and selects exercises that pulls you out of it. All right. So to keep that very easy term of front muscles to back muscles is anterior to posterior. I try to have what we call a posterior chain focused workout week. So throughout the week, have more back extender or retractor muscles worked than you would your front. So over time, you go from this posture to this posture as you get fitter and stronger. I hope it makes sense. A lot of training modalities or programs, if they're only set out to make you fit. So if the thinking behind the coach writing the workout is to get you sweating, to get you hurting, vomiting, wobbling, all these standard things that the fitness industry strives for as a badge of honor, Those exercises usually are just thrown in by what's hardest. So yes, by the end of the workout, you've achieved a huge metabolic rate, but you're also doing that at a damage to your body, okay? Training I could spend all day on, but they're the two main points I'll sit in on. You could also go into a lot of time, a lot of people don't rest enough, so recovery measures aren't there. The overtraining thing comes in, so you're training too hard for what your recovery measures are. It means you're not recovering from the workouts. The stimulus applied to your connective tissue just builds on before it finally breaks and snaps. I mean, I could go on all day about training error, but I'll leave you there. Last one, asymmetry. It's easy. You're either more coordinated and you have more tension on your left versus your right. Either you have a job or a sport that repeats one side. So if you think like golf, golfers always have an asymmetry because they're always swinging one side of their body. They're over-rotating that, versus their rotation pattern or coordination on their left side is not as strong. So whenever you've got an asymmetry left to right, creates a twist or a shift. It's an unnecessary torque throughout the body. So that's a pretty easy one, asymmetry.
No tennis players. Yeah.
Yeah, so there are three causes of injury, guys. So how a non-impact injury occurs, okay? So non-impact meaning a joint or a strain or some sort of pain point has just come about. One day it starts niggling, it's all achy, belly, and then just over a period of, could be weeks, months, or a period of years, up to a decade or so, it just gradually creeps up and gets worse and worse. This is how it happens. So it all starts with a dysfunctional movement pattern, right? So your body has learnt or found a way to control a certain movement, doesn't know quite yet whether it's optimal or not, okay? It won't know it's the optimal way to perform that pattern until you start causing some sort of pain or injury, right? You've learned a dysfunctional movement, right? Somewhere within that movement, there'll be somewhere where it's really unstable, right? So the instability is very high, and to protect itself from that instability, your brain's response to the dysfunctional movement pattern will be a biomechanical blockage. So it's going to tighten a muscle up. It's going to overuse a muscle, shorten and tighten it up, and restrict your joint's movement in whatever it may be, okay? Now, over time, that blockage will cause a pain. It could be sharp pain, it could be dull pain, it could just be an annoying pain that sits in the back of your mind for a few weeks. But whatever it may be, it's a pain. A pain is a signal, a warning sign to tell you that the way you're moving is not optimal. Go back, find another way to do the same thing until it causes another pain. We'll see where we're at. The pain you experience is just your body's way to tell the brain that that's not optimal, find a different way, and then I'll decide whether that's optimal or not. If you ignore that pain, which most people do because it doesn't start off, it's not very sharp, it's just more annoying than anything. If you go down the painkiller route, the cortisol steroids, all those sort of general GP doctor's route, is they block your senses of the pain. So it blocks the receptor from where the pain is to your brain. So you ignore it, continue on that dysfunction. If you continue that dysfunction, it'll build and then it causes the injury. Injury is the result of negligence, really. You've ignored the pain for so long, you've now tipped the iceberg and it's capped off, you're now injured. Okay. So what we try to do at True T is we look at the dysfunctional movement pattern. We assess how people move at the standard patterns that I'll go through in a second. And we try to correct those movements before it gets to the injury. But if you are coming into us injured, it's not that much a different process to get you into the rehab, so then we can then rehab it, if that makes sense. Sorry there. Okay. Nope. So the joint cycle, joint injury cycle, okay, sort of splits off to 2 points. So at the top here, you got joint or ligament injury. You strain something, right? Once you strain something, it veers off. You get proprioceptive deficiencies. So proprioceptive deficiencies means your brain can't sense what's happened to that pain area, whether you've torn a muscle, ripped a tendon, done something inside the joint, whatever you've done, your brain can't see or sense that area as well as it could do for it. Right? So that leads to decreased neuromuscular control. So your brain's ability to control that joint is decreased, or it's numb. I call it neural smudging. It's almost like your brain's got a picture of your body and it smudges out where you're just injured. Okay, so between your proprioceptive deficiency, so your sensory feedback from that area is altered, you have decreased neuromuscular control, so your output of that area is at a decreased control, which means, in layman's terms, you have a joint instability. All right, it's a dumbed down way of saying it. Your joint is now unstable because you've injured it. Joint instability then goes global and creates a functional instability. And the functional instability is the overall movement. All right, so let's do a knee, for example. If you injure your knee, okay, it's your ligament injury, you're not going to be able to control flexion extension very well or resist rotation very well. All right, the knee becomes unstable, rattles around a lot, and it doesn't control its one job very well. But then the functional instability would be lunging, squatting, walking, and running becomes very hard and dysfunctional. All right, so the joint would be the unstable knee. Functional instability would be the movement, would being a lunge, a squat, or a run, or whatever the knees needed. Okay, now you've got a functional instability, then repeats the injury cycle. Okay, now what most people do when they are injured is when they get to this functional instability stage, just rest, take a bit of time off, they rest the area, they don't use it as much. Now, all resting does is it just allows the inflammation and pain to dissipate. It doesn't change what this cycle does. It actually comes back worse. So if you get any sort of injury, rest, loosely, is probably the worst thing you can do. Right? Injury is just saying what you did's changing. You got to change it. All right. So once you've recovered from the pain, to avoid this repetitive injury, somewhere between here, you've got to change the pattern of your lunge so it's not a repetitive injury. Each time you cycle around this cycle, repetitive injury will get worse and worse and worse. One day it's a full-blown surgery or like a replacement of that joint, or it becomes a permanent long-term issue that you're dealing with. Okay, hope that cycle makes sense. Please, if there's any questions, guys, chuck them in the chat box. I'll be happy to stop and go over something again if it didn't make sense. I'll be happy to go over it a bit slower in a different way. But if everyone's sweet, I'll move through. So where your issue lies is either you have a software issue or a hardware issue. Software is pretty much in and around the brain. Your brain's mapped the body beneath it and its control. So somewhere between the communication here and here, a bit lost. So motor control, which is you have a habitually confused muscle. A muscle has a job to do. Over time, you've taught it to do something else. And that confusion of what that muscle's job is causes the pain and dysfunction. Example there would be your core unit. Right? So your core unit, as much as when you are lean and those abs are showing, it looks good, your traditional core exercises like your Russian twists, your crunches and sit-ups and all those sorts of things, they teach stability muscles to be mover muscles, right? So your obliques can rotate the trunk, all right? They are rotators, but that doesn't mean they are to rotate. So functionally, we don't want your obliques to rotate. What they do is they measure the amount of rotational force applied to the body, and they contract to resist that stimulus given it to it. So somewhere in there, if you've got a habitually confused oblique system, your obliques would allow rotation to happen, energy to leak out everywhere, which would be twisting the lumbar spine, creating degeneration over time and arthritic vertebrae. Okay, well, you've got a sensory input problem, right? So the information being received from the body up your spinal cord to your brain is being altered somewhere, right? Your proprioceptors haven't developed. That usually happens in people that wear cushioned shoes for long periods of their life. They don't get a sensory feedback from their feet, and their body starts walking around limpy and blind. Or their posture's out, especially the way your inner ear works, forward head tilt. If your inner ear's out, it's confused as to where your body's posture. So the sensory input on your balance and where you are in the ambient world, it's a little altered, so then your motor output gets altered, which leads to that injury. If you have a hardware issue, it's usually an overactive or underactive muscle. It's your muscle imbalance. There's something in physically stopping the joint from doing its thing, right? Something physical there. Even next to that, you could have a genetic bone growth. I mean, especially in and around hips, around the big facets of the spine, a lot of people have genetic little growths. That is a hardware issue. If that's going to stop you from getting into a deep hip flexion to a deep squat, you're going to have a bony part that's going to stop the femur from getting to a deep squat. And maybe because of that hardware issue, you're getting hip pain, right? Or a hardware issue would be your capacity versus your capability, right? The connective tissue within our body, being muscles, fascia, tendons, any sort of connect, even your bones, spinal discs, anything that connects within the body, the capacity of workout that the capacity of the workouts you're giving your body doesn't have the capability to either hold on to it or recover from it. Okay, so if you're pushing past your fatigue limits and you're trying to go 120% on hoe, a lot of people I find are working above the capability of what their body can withhold. Okay, and that happens a lot, and that just wears down the tendons, doesn't improve the tendons, it makes them frail, breaky, and old. You're tearing muscles, you often become really, really tight very, very quickly. All these sorts of things are common hardware issues when you're trying to work above what your body is capable of holding on to. Okay. So that's a little bit of science of how an injury dysfunction occurs. Okay. Now we're going to look at some things on how we assess and correct you guys through selective fitness exercises. Dr. Porchek is someone I follow through quite closely. Dr. Porchek is a movement therapist from the States, very, very smart man. He's sort of he sort of founded and bloomed this thought of the 7 primal movements, right? 7 functional movements. These movements were ingrained, they're hardwired into our brains as we learned to get off the ground as a baby, right? These 7 foundational primal movements, he says a human must have in order to survive. If we didn't have the society, the supportive society that we've created, if we didn't have one of the 7 here, most likely we would die, right? So from the left here, we've got rotation, the ability to control and create rotation. In the middle here, you've got pull, all right, so the ability to pull something. All right, the third one here at the top is hinge, where you lift, you lunge, okay, then you've got your squat pattern in the middle at the bottom, and finally, bottom right-hand corner, that's push pattern. That's your baseline, all right? When I'm programming people, when I'm programming exercise, my base movements, okay? So the way I want people to see these primal movements is you got a benchmark, right? You got a benchmark about here, right? And if you can't effectively and comfortably perform all 7 movements up to this standard, your exercise within the gym and your sole purpose should be correction. All right? So say you're here and you're lacking control over a few of the 7 movements. Your idea, or at our gym, our endurance strength phase, is to get these movements up to a good baseline. Right? If you don't have a good baseline of these 7 movements, don't hope to go much further beyond into advanced movements and building on extreme heavy loads or really, really quick speeds. Right? Now, there's an issue a lot of the fitness industry has, is we're not assessing people's primal movements. We're assuming people can squat. We're assuming people can use their shoulder blades for a push and pull. We're assuming people can hinge properly. And they just get thrown into exercise and build on the dysfunctions that they come with. Effective, and what I say to a lot of people, a lot of fitness coaches that I coach, is it's your responsibility, so it's my responsibility to make sure that these 7 movements are in top-notch order before you're excessively loading with speed or weight. Right? Because if you're loading on and you can't fully achieve these movements, I'm just causing you an injury, right? And that's not what we want. Right? So I'm assessing and correcting your base movements first and foremost. Okay. That's me stepping back and looking at your move. Right? Maybe I see something funky. You're squatting and it's not looking right. I'm going to go step a bit further in and go a little bit deeper. And deeper is what we do is joint by joint approach. Now, Mike Boyle and Gray Cook are the 2 founders of the joint by joint approach. Very, very smart guys in themselves, and I have a lot of respect for them and their modalities to training. Okay, so the joint by joint approach looks at each joint within the body, highlights its primary need. Each joint has a degree of mobility and stability needed, but primarily needs one more than the other. Okay, so common painful areas that people complain about are usually the stability joints within the picture shown onto the right. Okay, now, it's usually the stability joints that cause pain is because the mobility joints above and below it aren't doing the job. Okay, so let's go through an example. Now, if my ankles, down the bottom, if my ankles don't have mobility, what we call our dorsiflexions, the ability for the knee to travel over the toe, is very common. Now, if my ankle's dorsiflexion isn't up to scratch, what it's going to do is it's going to collapse my foot arch, going to force my foot arch to the floor and drive the knee towards my midline. All right, so the biomechanical blockage is within the ankle. The ankle can't move. What it does is it flattens the foot, drives the knee inwards to the midline of your body so it can continue the motion you're asking your body to do, but not at an optimal method. Okay. My definition of mobility is having access to range, having access to a range of motion and control over that range. Okay. The range would be how far can my knee travel over my toe with no loss of integrity to my foot's heel or arch. Now, if I don't have that, my knee's going to drive inwards, and I'm asking my knee, the stability joint, to become a mobile joint. When a stability joint becomes too mobile, that's when the pain happens. But simply because your ankle is not mobile enough to do the job you're asking it to, it's then going to signal the knee above it to do more than it needs to do, or more than it wants to do, and that's where your pain arises. Ignoring that pain causes a knee injury, okay? So the joint by joint approach has benefited me hugely in the way I assess and watch people move, okay? So going up the chain, I'll go quickly and a little bit further than what the picture gives. So the foot, the arch of the foot, is a stability joint. It needs stability to hold a good arch. Then there's the ankle above it. Ankle needs back and forth, which dorsiflexion, so it needs mobility. Knee needs stability to resist any what we call lateral stimulus or side-to-side motion. It just wants to go back and forth, flex and extend. Hip socket, right, does the circumduction. It's a mobile joint, needs to be mobile in a lot of areas. Joint above it, your lumbar, so your lower back, is stability. Right? Now, if your hips don't want to move, or even the joint above it, your thoracic doesn't want to flex, extend, and rotate, that's where your lower back pain comes from, all right? Because your upper spine, the mobility of your upper spine is too stiff. Your hips are too stiff. All that pressure goes down to that lower back. That lower back that needs stability comes too mobile, right? And it just moves up pretty well all through all the joint. Mobility, stability, mobility, stability. Shoulders, shoulder blades is where it gets a bit hairy, is they need 50-50 both. So that's another reason shoulders get quite a bit of injury, is because they need equal parts mobility, equal parts stability, which requires a huge amount of strength and control. Okay. Oops. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go through what you call the 7 movement sins. So these are the 7 movements, or the 7 common biomechanical faults that people present with that relate to the most common injuries people get within the gym, okay? And they go from head to toe, right? Medial knee starts right from foot control, finishing all the way at number 7, protracted chin, okay? So when you start working in the gym, these are the movements I'm looking at. I'll get you to actually perform. And then based on the quality of these movements, I can predict how likely you are to be injured and where. So when I look at these 7 movement sins, I can predict where your injuries will be and how soon they come about. I then can change the way you work out here, what you do in our warm-ups, what you do instead of that squat, you do this squat, whatever. Tailor it to and improve these 7 movements in. Also too, when I teach rehab courses, a lot of people are like, all right, this is very good for a one-on-one setting. I'm sitting here and I can work someone's unique patterns, but how can I get it to a broad group? Right? So a true technique, we do group fitness, and we've had huge success helping people with their common pains and injuries get into huge, I'll say really impressive performances and mobility positions. Because what I do is, even though individually I go through 7 movements with you, I assume everyone that walks through this door has all 7. If I go out program exercise, assuming everyone has all 7, and I spend my day coaching people out of all 7, eventually and inevitably, everyone will have a reduction in the core quality of these 7 movements, okay? So what are they? The medial knee, the most common one, all right? Where your knee drops to the midline of your body. You always see it in lunges, all right? You do see it in squats, and if you've got a fine eye to it, it's very obvious in walking. Now, I'm going to say most of everyone has this condition because I see it everywhere. And it comes from the foot. So I'm looking at this diagram on the left here, okay? So this A arrow is signaling that the foot arch is collapsing. You don't have control of how to hold your foot's arch. So then your shin twists inwards, which drives the knee in, which puts the femur out, the hip out, the back out, the shoulder out, and it just travels up that line every time you take a step, which puts undue stress on your MC and your ACLs, all these other tendons. So all through here, that's how we get these common strains or even just painful points, as these ligaments are struggling to hold on to this collapsed knee, okay? It's a classic picture of what a medial knee looks like. If you want to see what a medial knee looks like in action, stand at the end of a fairly sized marathon run at the finish line, and you'll see everyone has a medial knee. Jax asked if I can say the 7 again. I missed one. That's all good, Jax. We're about to go through all 7 in a bit more detail. Okay.
I think she means the primal movements. because there was only 6 pictures.
Jax, did you mean the 7 primal movements or the 7 movement sins?
Because there's only 6 pictures.
I don't know when she put that up.
You missed the one behind.
Oh, walking gait.
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah, sorry. The one where he's carrying something on the far right, it's walking gait. My apologies, on my screen, your guys' video is covering that up. So walking gait, your walking pattern. So again, you've got rotation, pull, hinge, gait, push, squat, lunge. All right, there are 7 primal movements. So this video, this is my boss. Here's the physio. They're trying to do some demonstrations of this medial knee. Looks like in a lunge and a walk too. So as he lunges forward, can we all see that knee drive in? And this one is walking, it's subtle. He's trying to make it obvious too. When he takes a step, you'll see the kneecap twist and drive to the midline. Lands, twist and drive to the midline. Now, over time, I'm talking like years to a few decades, imbalance, the quadricep muscular imbalance this creates grinds the cartilage behind the knee apart. Now, the only reason you don't feel it till later in life is because that cartilage is so thick, there's no blood supply to it. And there's no blood supply, there's no nerve endings. If you have nerve endings, you don't feel it. So now that you've seen what that medial knee looks like in a walk, when you walk down the street next, you'll see everybody have it. Everybody has it. It's ridiculous. You'll be mind-blowing. But each time you take that step with that twist, you're grinding that cartilage away and grind that cartilage, and you're just shearing and shearing it off. One day you get about 35, 55, somewhere in there, you start getting these grinding. It's like your knee's got sandpaper in it. It's just... And each time you take a step up a step ladder or something, you're just agonizing, grinding pain, okay? Medial knee or valgus collapse is the technical term. It's control of the foot. You control the foot and you control the big toe, you control where that knee drives from, and then the hips are in a better position to grow a booty, I suppose. Trendelenburg sign, right? Obviously created by Dr. Trendelenburg. I just call it the trendy sign, because when someone's got a Trendelenburg sign, it looks like they're walking very trendy like Kath and Kim. All right, the hips just swing side to side. Now, most of the time, you only see it one side, right? Because one glute muscle looking on the left here, this is called your glute med. It's a major stabilizer of the hip that sits underneath the glute max. And it's a big focus in my training here at True T, is how this glute med function, okay? Now, the big pain points, or you always see this in a runner as well, is this hip shift, is this run. It sort of sits next to the medial knee, that works. Now again, what you'll see here is in my boss Ulrich, level hips. When he walks, he'll have a right side trendy. So when he steps to his right side, the left side drops. When he steps on his left side, the right side says up. Okay, so you see that hands line. Drop, drop. If everyone see that his right glute med is weak and inhibited, it's lazy. When he performs a lunge on his left, straight and strong. On the right side, slops the knees all over the place. All right, so that's a Trendelenburg sign created by a weak, inhibited, or just lazy glute med. All right, that's very, very important, especially if you want to avoid painful lower back or a replacement of the hip. All right, this is a big reason people get hip replacement. All right, Trendelenburg sign. Lumbar hypolordosis, so excessive curvature of the lower back. Okay, this is obviously like a nice normal spine, and then you see some people, this is just a crazy curvature of that spine. Okay, we call this an anterior pelvic tilt. All right, if you look at the hips here, on the right hand side, you'll see the hips almost like it's tipping water out the front. But on the normal spine, hips are only a little bit forward, right? So what we're looking at is a lot of the hip flexors and all the stuff that comes off the front of the hip down, very, very tight, pulls the hip down in front of you, all right, which causes all this back muscle to then tighten up as it lifts the back of the hip. Okay, the problems that arise here is you have lost control of any abdominal pressure, so your abdominal integrity, so your spinal stability from your core unit is lost. Cannot happen. If you are in this position, it is very, very hard to effectively stabilize the spine. Therefore, the signals to your brain will always shoot errors, and then your output on exercise will always show errors. All right? And it's just uncomfortable because all these back muscles are always tight. If these facet joints, these spikes that come off the spine, aren't shearing first. So shearing is when the bones bash on each other, start grinding on each other, they start breaking and getting very arthritic. Okay. The lumbar hypolordosis, anterior pelvic tilt. We're looking at core control and glute strength to fix this one. So we can get those hips tilted back the way we want them to go. Excessive posterior pelvic tilt, obviously it's the opposite. Right? It's where your butt sort of tucks under. We've seen this, guys, or a lazy stance before. All right, the pelvic tilt is the opposite to what we saw before. All right, very flat back. See when people squat, the butt sort of hides and winks under it, and often just rounds the back. All right, these people are precursors to disc bulges, disc herniations. Okay, so if we look at the spine on the last slide, we don't have any disc issues here because these bony structures are in the way. So you're going to bash these bony structures before these discs have too many issues. Okay, you will get excessive degeneration. If you're a very active person, you might get a bulge here because that becomes your pivot point instead of your hips. That's another discussion. We're looking at posterior pelvic tilt. So usually in these people, called the posterior hip muscles. Okay, so your glute or glute stabilizers that hip stabilizers that sit underneath the hip, things like hamstring, adductor magnus, all these muscles pull your hip or pull your butt under itself. So you can't flex or you can't push back into your hips while maintaining a nice lordotic or back curve. All right. As soon as you lose the integrity of spinal muscles that run up, they flatten because you're rounding your back. The core muscles that hold those vertebrae together actually let go. They have to let go and be switched off for your butt to wink under, your spine to round, and then your discs sort of protrude through that gap. And that's when you feel it because those discs will protrude and they sit and they sort of press on your spinal nerve. And that's when you get that zinging, zapping, sharp pain where you sort of stab yourself in the back. Tani says, sitting down all day, I'm guessing. Actually, no. Posterior tilt, Tani, actually usually comes from standing too much. So retail workers, funny enough, yourself, actually worse off a posterior pelvic tilt. Because if you're standing all day, sort of slouch, it's a bit like my son. Yeah, teenage boys, very common, very common. As they grow up and build a bit of a muscular tone, they usually get out of it. Yes, we call it a sway back posture. You're seeing on the left there. It is a lazy posture because you're standing a lot and you sort of slouch into yourself.
Don't you see that a lot in tall people as well because they overcompensate their height by slouching their shoulders?
Yes, so
yep.
Tall people usually get a posterior tilt because they're slouching down. Shorter people usually have the other one, the anterior pelvic tilt, to try reach up to everyone else's level. Okay. Either way, there are two different conditions for the spine. We attack them differently, but we program for both here anyway. Yes, Connor's tall and slouches. That's okay. I did too. You can get out of it, especially if you're a teenager. The only time I'd worry about sloppy teenage posture is if they're very inactive or they have no real intention to be active. If you're an active teenager, you've got sloppy posture and poor movement patterns, I wouldn't be too stressed. I'd be stressed if those patterns continued to 19, 20, those early 20s. If they were present around that age, that's when I'd look a little bit harder to correct. But teenagers, they're kind of like, that's how they learn to move, really, is they have all this movement, they have all these limbs, just got to get strong with it. It's a huge vision loss. Yes, Jack says it's a vision loss, is this. And Jack's, a lot of that comes to that inner ear, right? So you'll see in this position, his head's pushed forward. That loss of vision actually comes from that inner ear. You don't really know where you are in the ambient world. That will steal the ability to see out your eyes to try find its way back into center. What we discussed the other day. Okay, so that's the lower body. Now we have two conditions for the shoulder: poor push and poor pull. And each one of them is either what we call a glenohumeral, ball and socket joint problem, or scapular problem, a shoulder blade issue. A shoulder has two joints. It has the ball and socket and the shoulder blade on the back. Now, they're right next to each other, but they're, in my eyes, they're two completely different joints. Okay? So the shoulder blade at the back is actually very hard to control. Now, I don't blame a lot of dysfunction being here due to knowing how hard shoulder blades are to control. Now, the inability to control your shoulder blades will then affect the pain and performance of the glenohumeral ball and socket joint. Okay, so we're looking at either winging scap, which is this one on the left. We've all seen this one where someone gets into a push-up position and then these mountains like erupt out of the back. Oh, and you're going to take off. It's the stability side. So when I said before, the shoulder blade needs equal parts mobility, stability. Winging scapula has no stability. And what you're seeing is just a sinking effect. Okay, so Ulrich's there trying to describe a push-up or push technique, where we're not using the stability of our scapulas. What we're doing here instead is we're actually using glenohumeral joints. So what we're doing is on the right-hand side, this lurching effect is we call no retraction, right? Because this shoulder blade can't go across the back, the shoulder joint is then pushed forward. All right. So then what we're doing is we're overusing the rotator muscles within inside the shoulder joint, which don't want to rotate despite the name. And we said that before. Rotator muscles, especially stability muscles, they sense the rotation coming in, and then they measure a contraction against that, which in the end doesn't look like movement, resisting movement. All right, so the rotator cuff muscles hold onto the arm, the shoulder blade pulls it back. What you're seeing in a lurching is the rotator muscles trying to do both, and it doesn't work. In this one, you're going to get very sharp pains either around the front here, or jarring pain right on the back. We'll always talk about it's right there. All right, it's because you're jamming the joint up. You don't have freedom of movement within the shoulder blade itself. The winging scapula, when you're in that push-up position, instead of the shoulder blade holding the glenohumeral joint, glenohumeral just sort of just sits in it, just stacks in it. There's no integrity to holding it there, just sits in it. And then we start grinding the inside of the shoulder apart. So when you're watching someone do push-ups and their shoulder blades are sitting out, they're pushing up away, just know they're grinding everything in there for future shoulder surgery. Okay, it's doing them no good. Oh my God, yes, this is in my pain. I've got you, Michelle. Very common, super, super common is this stuff, honestly. Or pull comes very similar. All right, you have lurching again, which is there. We also have elevation, where it's like a shrug. All right. So before I play the video, the picture here, what I want you guys to look at when Ulrich does this row is the lack of movement of the shoulder blade going across the back. All right. So shoulder blade retraction, which you need to pull, shoulder blades need to go towards the spine. What you're seeing in a lurching isn't. It's actually called an anterior tilt, where it sort of slides up towards the neck, right? Because the muscles here won't allow it. If you're this guy doing this bent over row, if your spine is what we call flexed, you can't retract the shoulders, the spine's in the way, it creates that lurching. Only way you can go from here is up, right? We create neck compression as well, okay? So not only are you damaging the ball and socket, also damaging the neck in the fact that the only way this can travel is up. And that's what we'll see in this video. So shoulder blade moves up, not across. Like that. So we're getting this overuse or too much work within the shoulder joint itself. All right. So that forward push of the shoulder as someone tries to push and pull is a dysfunction that we're trying to get people out of. Now, a lot of it becomes, because shoulders are such a complex joint, there's so many other features up and down the body that help and alter that position. A lot of it is just control. A lot of people don't have control. The spine needs to be very mobile. The shoulders need to be very mobile. And if we're sitting all day slouched and hunched over here, retracting the shoulder blades not only becomes mentally hard, but also physically trying to push the spine into extension, as well as stretch all these really tight chest muscles. Okay, so pull is very common. Okay, last one, protracted chin. We've all seen this one in what we call the iPhone generation or the smartphone generation. Very serious is because this inner ear, if it's not in line, it drives everything. So like Jack said, it alters your vision or how well you can see. It steals from your memory retention or recall. It steals from so many other bodily functions because your brain's just focused on, why am I 2 inches forward? It gets confused. It's because the inner ear is 2 inches further forward than the walking pattern you're doing behind it. So to your brain, it's almost like you're walking, then there's a ghost of you walking behind you, and it's trying to figure out why you're 2 inches forward, everything's moving 2 inches back. That makes sense. Also, migraines, neck compression, nerve pain, all these common things, as this forward head comes, all this muscle tissue you see in this photo becomes very locked down, bound up. It's trying to stop that head from going any further forward. It just shuts down. And that's where you get that end of the day, oh my God, my neck is killing me, because all these muscles have spent all day trying to pull your shoulder and head back. It's causing you pain. In the functional world, this is what it looks like. Got a shoulder injury, got a neck pain, got a lower back pain from this condition. This is what we're trying to avoid. It's not how we're meant to move. Okay. So there are 7 movement sins, and that's pretty much the base of everything that I do at True Technique. Everything evolves around assessing and correcting 7 movement sins, and they sit inside everything that we discussed beforehand. Okay. So I look at everyone individually with those 7 movement sins in my goggles. The programming I do for a group scenario, everything I do, Monday to Saturday, everything I do in my business and for my fitness, assuming we've all got 7 movement sins and we're all striving to get away from those 7 movement sins. And once we do that, we then can achieve really great aesthetic and athletic abilities. Okay.
Like the coach.
So to recap all this, all right, the purpose of corrective exercise is to correct and strengthen movement patterns, establishing joint mobility and control, all right, stability and mobility. We're enhancing muscle and connective tissue capacity to stretch and resist contractions and forces applied to it. right? That's the definition of stability. We've got to establish functional stability. That's not with a Bosu ball, all right? We don't create stability standing on an unstable surface. Nowhere on the earth does the earth wobble like that, so we don't need to create stability around an earth that wobbles. The guy that actually created the Bosu ball almost immediately disproved how well it works. But the world already bought into it. It doesn't work. We have many, many, many methods here at True T to create functional stability, long-term effects. And then we've got to improve motor control and coordination. And once they're achieved, we then can develop, and we have unleashed this huge amount of potential for strength and power, okay? The final notes is the system that I've created. So over time, I've looked at all these things that the general population needs and wants, and the system is release, lengthen, activate, integrate, educate, okay? So from the very first moment you walk into the gym to the last step out of the gym, hopefully this whole system has been in play. You walk in, I've got a list of common tight muscles that need releasing. Right? So release through trigger point and foam roll. I release the tension. Once the tension has been released, is then open and acceptable to lengthening. All right, we have different stretching modalities, mostly contraction based. Then we can safely lengthen those tight muscles, those short muscles, allows the joint to move. Now, more mobility you gain, less stability you gain. So if I leave it just there, risk of injury goes up. So what we have to do is I have to activate the opposing muscle, the opposing weak muscle. So what we do is if we release our pec minor, that we do most days, we get the ball in, the opposing muscle is at the back. It's beneath my shoulder blade, my lower trap, and that muscle pulls it back and down. What I have to do is after I release and lengthen this pec minor, I then have to activate muscles back here so it stays strong. So we've gained mobility, then put some neurological awareness and stability into it. Using those two, we've put the joint into a safer and better coordinated position. And then I try to integrate that into your strength workout. All right. Then go, all right, we've opened the joint up, we've stabilized the joint. This is how you control the joint. Now I want you to control the joint while you're doing your squats today, while you're doing this. So I integrate that little system within the warm-up, have to implement that same methodology into the actual workout itself, okay? Then education is key. If I don't educate you guys and tell you why you hold your knee out there, why you brace this so hard, why this happens like this, and I'm being so nitpicky on everyone's positions and postures, if I don't tell you why that's happening, it's not going to soak in, it's not going to work, and you won't do it long term, all right? Because this is long term things, and if you don't have a reason why you do this long term, it's easily forgotten and you go back to old habits, okay? Especially if you have an injury. Give me a hands up in the chat box if you're one of these people that has a common injury, keeps coming back every few months, or every time you try to do a deadlift, it's always there. You've seen a physio, you've seen that specialist, you've had that scan done, you've seen this GP. You've all got these little bits of things. But when someone says to you, what's wrong with your back? The answer still is, I don't know. Are you one of these people? Yes, that's me over decades, 100%. I've met literally hundreds of people in the exact same boat. They've spent thousands of dollars. They've spent years trying to help themselves. And when they've finally gone, I've expended everything, you know what, screw it, let's just go to the gym. I've met this dude to help some people's pain. I say, all right, well, you know, what's wrong with your shoulder? Or what's wrong with your back or your knee or whatever? And they go, I don't know, it hurts. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you've been seeing all these specialists and not one of these specialists have told you what the condition is or the anatomy around it, or they taught you how to control it or why it happens or all these things. Like if you've been working with lower back pain 10, 15 years, you should know everything there is to be around that particular lower back pain. Am I right? Education is absolutely vital key in this system, okay? That's what we've created. Some of the guys saying, yep, lower back, yep, my shoulder used to, not anymore. Awesome, Tony. I'm glad we got over that one. Yours was the overusing of the shoulder girdle. Michelle, yes, but came to you and had me having haven't had a break due to personal things, but I know Dan fixed you up. That was awesome, Michelle. That was good. Kelly, been there, done that. Awesome. Yes, me over decades. This isn't new stuff, guys. I've worked with many, many people doing the exact same thing. So for then me to branch it out and create a system that multiple people with the same vision as I do can jump in. I want people feeling like they're working out, have these little epiphanies we're having. Yes, a few months later, I didn't have that pain. But Arnie, Michelle, all these guys that come into it, did you at all feel like there was a clear line between rehab and workout? Or was it just the same thing? So I'm hoping it's just the same thing. I want people to not see the difference between tweaking a strength workout and a strength workout. I want it to be the exact same, and I think it should be the exact same. So you feel like you're getting the workout that you want and need, then a few months later, it's like, oh, that pain's now gone. I'm not thinking about it anymore. It just disappeared. Okay. So I haven't had pain since coming to TT because of the technique correction. Awesome. Jax is a perfect example. If you don't mind Jax, I'm going to spend 5 minutes talking about her. And where the fitness industry commonly would leave Jax in the worst case scenario. The Jax is a super, super duper flexible person. I've never met anyone in my life with the flexibility that Jax possesses. But the fitness industry has a huge drive towards mobility, flexibility, reaching these ranges. When someone like Jax, who genetically has way too much mobility, is thrown into the general population fitness world where they don't assess, don't correct, and knowledge on how to work with the unique individuals not there, she will actually come out in huge amount of pain. Yes, she'll temporarily be fit and strong. You can't give someone that's too mobile more mobility drills. For Jax to get rid of her pain, it's all stability, it's all strength. She needs no flexibility work at all. In fact, even in the workouts, I tell Jax, don't worry about doing that stretch. You don't need to do that thing. Don't worry about doing stretches at the end of workout. If you like doing stretches, you do it, but this is where things like you need that individual coach to look at you yourself and say, all right, these are where problems could arise. This is how we can help you with it. Right? We don't have to change the system for everyone else to suit you, because the system that everyone else is doing, I've just got to highlight to you where you need to focus more attention to. Huh? So if we create or we strive for prehab method of fitness, longevity that we get from that is huge. So when we do prehab for strength training, we're looking at how we end up at these old ages. This old fit lady at the bottom here, she's actually, 84? She's 84 years old. Incredible. She didn't start fitness till she's 50, mid-50s, okay? This other lady, if I say to you, picture 85 to 90-year-old lady, what do you think of? I know I'm thinking of this person, all right? Because my grandmother that's 90 is not much better than this, right? Not many are. But the activity, habits, the fundamental strength, coordination that you build while you have the capability to build it determines where you are at this old age. So yes, my goal for you guys is to have, a fitness service where it is ticking boxes for your short-term goals. All right, I want people to lose amounts of body fat and gain lean muscle mass. So I want people to have that confidence in their physical appearance, but I want no sacrifice whatsoever to their long-term health. Right? And that does mean that yes, your short-term goals will take longer than the next gym down the road, and I'm not going to deny that. If your goals are strictly fat loss and that's all you care about, and you want to get done as quick as possible, this isn't the gym for you. I can get those done. It's going to take a little bit longer because I'm adjusting things around. So when you build on that strength and fitness, building it on foundations, they'll complement you when you are mid-80s to 90. All right. What I most commonly see is people striving for, I want to look good now. I want to lose 10 kilos in this 8-week challenge. This big rush to get something that shouldn't be rushed is a huge sacrifice to how well they live when they're old. Okay. That's my vision for you guys. It's my vision for myself. I've just collected you guys that just shared that with me. It's great. Nowhere else in Australia is doing what we're doing on a broad spectrum. I know there's lots of coaches out there doing it in small group, personalized coaching scenarios, but we're the first one to branch it out to everyone. And I'm hoping it will actually change the whole fitness industry, because as people are now shifting towards injury prevention modalities to fitness, now looking at what we are doing. So you guys are on the front end of that. And when this big wave of injury prevention training kicks off, you'll say, I was at the forefront of that. I know everything there is to be about that because I'm teaching. Hey guys, that's it. Can't see you guys take off. Thanks, Jax. I hope so. That's it for that. That's our prehab method. If there's any questions, now's your last chance. Other than that, it was spectacular. I'm glad I got that off my chest. I love having those rants. Love what you guys do. Thank you. Thanks, Michelle. I loved having you here. But if there's no questions, guys, coming through, thank you. You enjoy your night, and I will talk to you guys soon. I'll get the next one up shortly. If you've got any ideas or any topics you want me to discuss during one of these webinars, post it up and I'll be more happy to create that.